The Chinese have a saying: before you set out on revenge, first dig 2 graves.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Roll Screen Team. I'm Andrew Thomas. I'm here with fellow James Bond, Christopher Johnson.
Hello everyone.
And we're getting close to being done with Roger Moore, but we still have 2 more movies to go.
Yep. And this one is one of the more serious films in the Roger Moore era. For Your Eyes Only.
Again, since it was supposed to be the previous one.
Yeah. Before the Star Wars craze happened and James Bond had to go in space.
So, want to get to the overview?
Sure. For Your Eyes Only is a 1981 spy film based on 2 1960 short stories written by Ian Fleming, For Your Eyes Only and Risico. The film is the 12th film in the James Bond franchise produced by Eon Productions. The film was produced by Albert R. Broccoli and directed by John Glenn in his feature directorial debut. The film was written by Richard Maibaum and Michael G. Wilson. For Your Eyes Only is the 5th film to star Roger Moore as James Bond alongside Carol Bouquet, Chaim Topol, Lynn Holly Johnson, and Julian Glover.
Mm-hmm.
And now the synopsis. Bond attempts to locate a missile command system while becoming tangled into a web of deception spun by a rival Greek businessman. Bond joins forces with Molina Havelock, a wealthy hero of the Greek resistance movement and seeker to avenge the murder of her parents, to find the command system equipment.
Roger Moore it was a good movie. Roger Moore did really well in this movie.
Oh yeah, this definitely
along with fighting jailbait.
Oh God, we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. But this was definitely a great film for Roger Moore to show, his range as an actor. Mm-hmm. Especially getting to see him be a bit more tough and maybe cold-blooded in kind of his own unique way. Mm-hmm. We definitely see more of the Bond that we kind of know based on what Sean Connery and later on what Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan and maybe even Daniel Craig would end up being. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely cool to see Moore do that, but do it in his own unique way. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see Roger Moore kick a freaking car off of a cliff to avenge a fellow ally that ends up getting killed. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean,
yeah, I agree with you. He was much more badass, and he was also the voice of reason.
Yeah, because he definitely knows that sometimes going for revenge can kind of cloud your judgment, and we definitely end up seeing that later on with some of the other Bonds. Mm-hmm. But
then we get the opening scene with them in Blofield, or is that the next one?
Oh no, this was the one.
Yeah.
Where we actually get to see a resolution to one of the biggest tragedies in James Bond's history. We finally get to see Bond take down Ernst Stavro Blofeld once and for all. But it's interesting because during this time, this was when Eon Productions were in their ongoing rights court case with Kevin McClory, so they couldn't actively call him Blofeld or say anything involving Spectre or anything else like that, but it's alluded to that this is Blofeld, and
back to his original state from the early Sean Connery movies where he just hid in.
Yeah. And also, this is supposed to be Blofeld recovering from the injuries that he suffered from on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Though it doesn't make sense because Diamonds Are Forever and, Charles Gray and the fact that Blofeld's back is bald and... Yeah, the continuity gets weird, but it is still cool to see this.
Yeah, it goes down the shaft.
Yeah. And to actively see the continuity go on between all the different Bonds that, pretty much from Connery all the way to Pierce Brosnan, this is all the same guy. They all went through the same thing of falling in love with Tracy. Tracy dies, and, all that happening. That actually is pretty cool. And the fact to see Bond once and for all defeat Blofeld, I really enjoy it. And also, I think this was a big kind of personal middle finger to McClory. Yeah. Because later on, McClory would end up doing his movie Never Say Never Again with Sean Connery, which actually utilized Blofeld and Spectre. So this was kind of Albert R. Broccoli biting his thumb. But with talking about Bond, why don't we go into the Bond girl? Molina Havelock, played by Carol Bouquet. Molina Havelock is quite possibly the most badass Bond girl ever, with quite possibly the biggest kill count. Yeah, who would have thought this, this nice, Greek rich girl would have such a mean streak.
Yeah, but we also get her origin story of how she at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, where she's going to see her parents again. They having a nice time on their yacht, and then oh no, they get gunned down, and you just see the evolution of her in those few moments where you see just the pure heartbreak and sadness in her eyes, and then as they pan more into her eyes, you just see the rage grow. Without her even saying a word, you can just see the rage in her eyes, and that she's out for blood. She's looking for revenge. And the fact that she's a master markswoman with a freaking crossbow. Yeah, she's practically Huntress without the mask.
But wasn't she dubbed over?
Yes. Matter of fact, she is the last Bond girl, or really the last actor in any of the Bond films to be dubbed over. She was French, so she had a rather thick accent, so they decided to dub over her voice. But interestingly enough, in the French dubbing of the film, she dubbed herself in, her natural accent. What are your thoughts on Molina?
I liked her. She was one of the more badass Bond girls. She actually had a thing in the plot than some of the other ones that just showed up.
Yeah. she's very instrumental.
Yeah.
About in the main plot.
Yeah.
Something that we end up seeing with a couple of the next Bond girls. Well, with talking about the Bond girl, why don't we talk more about the rest of the team of MI6? Now, unfortunately, this is the one film where we do not have M, because out of respect for Bernard Lee and his abrupt passing, they decided not to have M in the film. So kind of filling the M role, we have two characters. We have Bill Tanner, and we also have Frederick Gray, played both by James Villers and Jeffrey Keane, kind of filling that role for M. What were your thoughts of Tanner and Gray?
They were okay. I just didn't feel right without Bernard Lee there, especially in his office.
Yeah, it's weird seeing someone else sit in his chair.
Yeah.
But they serviced the film for what they needed, you know. It's just very unfortunate that Bernard Lee wasn't able to be in this film, especially with the whole idea that in the original short story, M was actually friends with the Havelock family. So he would have had a much more invested interest in Bond working to avenge their deaths. So, yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate lost opportunity. Of course, Desmond Llewellyn is back as Q. Though Q doesn't get to give Bond a gadget this time, but he ends up using a rather unique way for Bond to describe one of the assassins that's working for the main villain. Yeah, they use this weird 3D software to properly identify who he is based off of what Bond saw of him from memory. It's weird.
Yeah.
Definitely a bit dated on today's standard, but it is interesting.
Yeah.
And of course, there is an ally that works with Bond that ends up becoming kind of a sacrificial lamb. Luigi Ferreira, played by John Moreno. You know, he was cool for what little he had.
Lois Maxwell.
Oh, yes. My apologies. Yeah, nice to see Lois Maxwell once again as Miss Moneypenny.
Yeah, explaining why M isn't in the movie.
Yeah, they had to find some way to skirt around the fact. It's kind of unfortunate she doesn't necessarily get to do too much in the film, but what you gonna do? But with talking about those allies, why don't we go into a few others?
Okay.
Such as Cassandra Harris as Countess Lisa Von Schlaf. And what's interesting is Cassandra Harris, she actually introduced her husband onto the set. And that husband turned out to be a certain young actor by the name of Pierce Brosnan. Yes, during the filming of this film, This was when Albert R. Broccoli was introduced to Pierce Brosnan. And, of course, we know how history ends up happening. Mm-hmm. So it actually is kind of cool how kind of serendipity happens just by happenstance. Mm-hmm. Pierce Brosnan's wife plays a small part in this film, and it would end up leading to him becoming Bond later on down the line. But I did like Cassandra Harris for what little she got to do, and God, she's also one of the more brutal sacrificial lambs in this film. I think, personally, I think Bond should have been a bit more angry about her death rather compared to Luigi's. And do we talk about her now?
Yeah, so the jailbait.
Yes, Lynn Holly Johnson. Oh, God. Yeah, her character is a figure skater. It's alluded to the fact that, she's like, 16 or something? 16, 17?
Yeah.
She's definitely not a grown woman, even though despite the fact that Johnson herself was 21, 22 at the time, but she's playing a teenager, and this girl really has the hots for Bond, and Bond is kind of freaked out by it. He's like, I am not interested in this whatsoever. No. Why don't we perhaps get you an ice cream? Go put your clothes on. Tell you the truth, I really wish that he had kind of had that feeling for Molina, because Molina's rather young herself, and Roger Moore was, in his early 50s by this time. I mean, he still looked the part for Bond, but this man is in his 50s, hooking up with a girl in her early 20s. And then on top of it, having a girl that's a teenager trying to hook up with him. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
But let's talk about the Bond villain. You haven't gotten to the Bond villain yet.
Well, yes. The Bond villain himself. Well, should we go with who was perceived to be the villain and then was an ally, or...
Yeah, we could do that.
Well, first, there was someone who was considered to be the villain, but he ends up turning into a very important ally. Milos Colombo, played fantastically by Chaim Tokol.
Yeah.
This dude is like Cameron Bay on steroids. I mean, the dude is a smuggler. Yeah. He does do what would be considered, illegal operations, but he's not a villain. But he's so cool. He's a breath of fresh air. He adds a bit more of that, nice camaraderie that we haven't seen with a lot of the Bond allies in some time. Like I said, he feels just like how Cameron Bay was. What were your thoughts on Colombo?
He was kind of hilarious with him deciding to kidnap Bond and tell him, no, I'm not the bad guy here. It's the other guy.
Yep. Everything you know is wrong. But now we go into the main villain himself, Aristotle Chrysatos, played by Julian Glover. Yeah, this won't be the first time we talk about Julian Glover.
Yeah, he's one of the people in Doctor Who who've been in, including some people we haven't mentioned in other James Bond roles.
Yeah. Actually, at one point, Julian Glover was on the short list of playing Bond.
Yeah.
But things fell through.
Yeah, we get to talk about Julian Glover in both the Hartnell and the Tom Baker era.
Huh. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much this man has been in anything considered iconic in nerd culture. Mm-hmm. He was a Bond villain. He was in Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. He was the main villain in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He was one of the Empire generals in Empire Strikes Back. This man, fantastic pedigree. And and with knowing all that, they didn't utilize him in this film. Mm-hmm. You have Julian Glover, and you don't utilize your Julian Glover. Mm-hmm. Why? I understand you wanted to do that whole air of mystery of who is the actual villain, but come on, man. You have Julian Glover. You could have done more with that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll talk about more what he does when we get to Doctor Who.
Yeah, where he has a much more vested interest and actually does important things.
In a couple stories, yeah.
On some other additional, what you would consider the good, mm-hmm. Very nice to see the return of the Lotus,
yeah.
which is pretty much the signature car for Roger Moore's era, though it does kind of hurt me to see the thing explode. Mm-hmm. Why? Why would you do that to the Lotus? Why? And it's also cool to see Walter Gotell return once again, for his small part during the climax, where he wants to get the missile command system, but Bond is like, I ain't letting you get this. Mm-hmm. Chuck it off a cliff. Mm-hmm. And Gotell's like, oh, shucks, you. Mm. Yeah, he takes it a bit more in stride than I think he would. He kind of laughs it off, despite the fact the man left the Soviet Union to show up to get this thing, but... But, on one other good thing that definitely needs to be discussed, the theme song. Mm-hmm. For Your Eyes Only, performed fantastically by Sheena Eden. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, this is the only time the performer of the theme song actually shows up in the opening credits. Mm-hmm. This was mainly done because they would end up recycling the opening credits to be the music video for the song, but I don't know, it's kind of cool to see the actual singer in it. And plus, the song's absolutely fantastic. Sheena Eden did a fantastic job. I mean, your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought she did good.
Well, I guess at this point, going to the scores.
I give this 7 out of 10. It gets lower because of all the jailbait stuff that kind of creeped me out with all the stuff going on there. But the plot was good. I enjoyed Julian Glover's performance, but that whole jailbait thing just lowers it down.
Yeah, for me, I have to give this one a 6.5. I understand a lot of people really like this film. I mean, there's definitely some elements in the film I truly enjoy. But for some reason, this one didn't invest me as much as a lot of the other ones. Mm-hmm. Mainly because of the fact of knowing how great the actor who's playing the main villain is, and they don't utilize him. There's also that whole weird thing of why is Bond so against Molina going out for revenge when when we see him enact revenge on more than one occasion and him enjoying it. Why? The hypocrisy? Why? He didn't have to dig 2 graves now, did he? No. Blofield ends up going down a freaking shaft, and one of the hitmen ends up getting kicked off of a cliff. So, yeah.
But if you disagree, find us on Facebook, The Real Screen Team. Where else?
You can also find us on Instagram, Reddit, and on TikTok.
And find us on YouTube also. And make sure to like, comment, share, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Not just check it out.
Oh, don't forget to follow us on Facebook.
Yep. But before we go, we saw 2 more Roger Moore movies to go, starting with
one of my personal favorites, right next to The Spy Who Loved Me. We get to discuss Octopussy.
Want to roll us out?
Sure. Well, thank you all for coming. Definitely come back and watch us again. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It definitely helps. Well, cut, print, that's a wrap.